this is a very important amendment to this bill, and this has the effect of capping indexation, help indexation, at 3%. Now, this would mean that help indexation would change to the lower of CPI or 3%, ensuring that everyone with a student debt, including future students signing up for a help scheme, for a help loan, would not be lumbered with the risk of escalating high indexation as we have seen under this Labor government. Because since Labor was elected, even after changes to the way help indexation is calculated, student debt has increased by an alarming 14.3%. This is in stark contrast to the average indexation rate under the former coalition government of just 1.7%. Now, this is a proposal backed by Australia's preeminent higher education expert, Professor Andrew Norton of Monash University. And in our Senate inquiry last year into the bill which changed HECS indexation to the lower of CPI, or the wage price index, he made it very clear that a much more certain way to proceed is to set a flat maximum indexation rate. And what he said was, this has the benefits of simplicity and reassurance. And I say to this chamber, why should anyone with a student debt face the risk of a 7.1% increase in their student debt, as happened in 2023? I mean, that was simply outrageous. And why did that happen? That happened because the Albanese government failed to control inflation. And inflation was higher for longer because inflation was homegrown, and because help indexation was directly linked just to CPI, when inflation was high, help indexation was high. And Australian students, young Australians, and anyone with a help debt paid a very high price. And so the government had to scramble, because with very high indexation rates, 3.9% in 2022, 7.1% in 2023 and 4.7% in 2024, anyone with a student debt was facing an increase over those 3 years of nearly 16%. So the government scrambled, and it changed the indexation methodology to be the lower of wages or CPI. And of course, that meant that there was an adjustment in the indexation, and indexation rates did come down, and that was at a cost of $3 billion, so there was some saving. But of course that only happened because wages were running at less than inflation. Real wages were going backwards, and this actually happens pretty rarely over the last 30 years. So it was a short-term fix, but it did not address the core problem. And we need to build confidence in the help scheme. We need to make sure that if anyone is going to take out a help debt, that they've got the confidence to do so and have their potential risk capped within the upper band of the RBA's inflation band, which is, of course, between 2% and 3%. Now, I'm bringing this amendment forward. It hasn't received the support of the coalition as a whole, but many of my colleagues have spoken to me about the positive merits of this amendment. It was something that I took forward before the last election, and I think it's a very important policy that we need to embrace as a whole. But I'm bringing this forward now because there is no time to waste. The coalition needs to present a credible policy alternatives when bills come before the parliament. There's no point doing this in 12 months' time. This is basically saying to the Senate, here is a credible policy alternative. And frankly, I've even had a couple of conversations, and I won't disclose those conversations, with people associated with the Labor Party, and I think that they see this has got some real merit as well. So I am asking for the support of the Senate for this amendment. And I do note with disappointment Senator Faruqi's comments about not supporting this amendment. And I say, what hypocrisy from the Greens. What hypocrisy. Senator Faruqi, to be fair, you and I have been, through the chair, we've been on the same page on the huge escalation in student debt. We've been on the same page. And in some respects, particularly in higher education, we've worked quite closely together where we've got mutual interests. Now, I get the politics. Senator Faruqi, but what I don't understand is why you would oppose this amendment, because this delivers greater certainty and greater assurance for anyone signing up to a help loan. So I'm disappointed. I think there's been a dirty deal done between you and Labor, because that's what happens in this chamber. We constantly see deals behind closed doors.
Order. Deals
behind closed. Well, at least Senator Hanson-Young, at least I've got the courage to stand up for my convictions. Okay? At least I've got the courage to stand up for my convictions. So why doesn't the Green? Why doesn't the cult?
Order.
Why doesn't the cult of the Greens?
Senator Henderson, please resume your seat. Senator Hanson-Young, please cease interjecting. Senator Henderson, please direct your comments through the chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Chair. Henderson. So I just say to the Greens, I'm very disappointed that the Greens would not support this amendment, because this does provide more certainty. It does provide greater assurance. It does build confidence in the help scheme when young Australians know that they can sign up and they do not face the risk of escalating student debt year in and year out. And I am really concerned. I mean, I spoke last night on the second reading about my concerns about the student debt discount bill, because there are big winners and losers here, and I won't repeat what I said last night in my second reading speech, other than to say I am going to support the bill, but I would like to see the bill improved, and I think this does improve the bill. And I think perhaps members of the government would privately consider that as well. So I am asking the crossbench to support this amendment. This does respect the fact that young Australians have had it really tough over the last 3 years. The cost of living crisis has hit young Australians really hard. I mean, Australians struggling to put food on the table, Australians struggling to pay the rent, and then to be faced with these massive increases in student debt, which of course the government has now alleviated through this student debt discount. But this is not a way to run a loan scheme. What's going to happen? Is the government going to go to the next election with another student discount, costing Australians and the 24 million people who do not benefit from this another $16 billion? This is not the way to run a loan scheme. So a much more responsible way to run it is to cap indexation, and then for the government of the day to take its responsibility to manage inflation seriously, because it does impose greater discipline on any government to say we take our responsibility to manage inflation very, very seriously, because if we don't, we will pay the price. And because at the moment what's happening under our scheme, with the help loan scheme with indexation uncapped, it is Australian students and debtors which are paying the price and wearing the loan scheme. So I would say to the Greens, please reconsider your position. I would say to the crossbench, please support this amendment, because this is common sense policy. This is sensible policy, and this is acting in the best interests of young Australians seeking to enter tertiary education. This is acting in the best interests of all Australians, and that's why I'm asking that this amendment be supported. Thank you, Chair.